All right, welcome everybody to our Bulletproof Your Immune System workshop. I'm just going to close the door so we can be focused. And I'm going to start with a story about Dr. Einstein, Albert Einstein. When he was a professor, there was a day when he was giving out a test to his students. And one student who had him in class before looked at the questions and he said, hang on, Dr. Einstein. These questions, they look like they're the same questions that we had last time. And Albert Einstein replied, well, the questions may be the same, but the answers may be different now. And so tonight we are going to be covering a topic, the immune system, where in the last 3 years, some of our answers may have been changing on how we're going to be addressing the immune system. And we're going to go deeper and more complex. And tonight we're going to geek out on this. So I really want you to understand in a way that maybe you've never understood before how the immune system works. And therefore, once you understand it, you're going to understand what you need to do to bulletproof it. Now, the old name for this particular webinar was how to boost your immune system in 21 days. And so we had that name because we literally saw people that followed what we recommended. In 21 days, they saw a change and improvement in their immune system. So I'm going to challenge you to be action-oriented today so that anything you learn, I want you to start applying it as soon as you can so that you really see the results with your immune system. And it really is all about taking action. So, nowadays, if you're listening to the mainstream media, they keep answering the old questions with the same old answers. And that is just bringing up more fear and more uncertainty. So we want to answer these questions differently so that you get what you need. And so you can really get the results that you want rather than getting the same old. And so I want to share with you tonight, not just strategies that can help you boost your immune system, but also reduce your risk of dying early from the chronic illnesses that plague our country today and our world. So I'm going to share with you 5 things you can do to bulletproof your immune system. 4 of them are useful pieces, but the 5th one is what controls the immune system. And so that's the one that I think you're going to agree is the most important one. All right, so I want everybody to stay engaged. And if anything resonates with you during the talk, make sure you jot it down because that's going to be the action step for you. Now, I want to just share a little bit of my background because my first way of encountering chiropractic had to do with my immune system. And so when I was just 13 years old, right? Oh, actually, I love this image of the phoenix because it's all about the promise of transformation that can occur. So even if you feel like your immune system has been tanked, there is this life force that can revitalize things. And I want to share my story of what I learned about the immune system early on that really put me in the place where I could see the potential of transformation in anybody's immune system. So 3 years before this picture was taken, when I was 13, I had strep throat. And my dad was in the midst of becoming a chiropractor. He was training. And so when he came home on vacation and found me with strep throat, the first thing he said was, let's check you. And so he checks me. And then he gives me my first chiropractic adjustment. And what do you know? A few hours later, I'm swallowing more easily and I'm feeling like I'm getting better. And before that experience, anytime something like that might have happened, we would have gone to the pediatrician. They would have given us penicillin. And I would have, if I took that penicillin and if I got better, I would have thought, oh, my healing came from that pill. But instead, my experience was, oh, my healing came from me because it was from a chiropractic adjustment. When I asked my dad, how does this work? He said, we just had to turn the power back on. So I realized even at that young age of 13, that my immune system function had to come from the power being turned on in me. And it was from then on that I just became so passionate and excited about natural healing. And here we are 40 years later, more than that actually. And I am just always looking for what are the best practices in order to not just optimize health, but also how do we bulletproof the immune system? So those are the things that I want to share with you, because from that experience at 13 years old, my vision of what was possible with health translated into the present day, where I envision a world where the natural state is extraordinary health. I really do. And so that's what I want to share with you today is what is possible if we can really get this right. And so the first thing we have to look at is what are we focusing on? And so the whole conversation, especially in the last 3 years, but I will tell you, being in the profession for 40 years, the dominant cultural conversation has not been what it's needed to be. And in the past 3 years, everyone is focused on the strength of the virus, but no one is focused on the strength of the host. And so that is really what we want to start with, because if we go back in history and look at just humankind and thousands of generations before us, we used to be the super species on the planet. I mean, basically, we were the species that could go anywhere on the planet and figure out how to survive, whereas other species, they had to have a certain habitat, and that's where they would thrive. We could travel all over the planet and thrive. And then fast forward to today, we have become the sickest species on the planet. We're the only species that has the level of chronic illness that we now have today. So something has happened where something's gone wrong. And part of the problem is we're still acting like we have that superhuman, superhero abilities. We're acting like that. But the problem is that we have actually become weak. So we were born superheroes, but we have become weak. And my colleague, Dr. James Chestnut, he says that people think about their health and they think that if they don't have good health or a good immune system, that it's because of bad genes or bad germs or bad luck. But actually what we learned is it's from bad behavior. And that's what I want to share with you. So the problem is not that we have this badass virus in town. The problem is that we are no longer the badass humans that would have been able to just deal with that no matter what comes along. So if we look at just the health equation, what is the formula here? Well, genetics certainly does play a piece to it. Genetics is definitely part of it. I'm just going to have a little seat here. There we are. So genetics is part of it. But I will tell you, in the last 6 to 10 years, when I've been studying I've gone to advanced genetics conferences, and this is what I take home from it, that 99.6% of us have the perfect genome to express perfect health as long as we have the right environment over time, right? It's only maybe 0.4% of the population that genetically inherits something that is just going to go sideways and there's not much you can do about it, right? But the rest of us actually have the potential to have extraordinary health. And so what is it that will upregulate or downregulate a gene? What is it that makes a gene express itself or be dormant? It's two things, either our lifestyle or our environment. Now, we don't always have control over our environment, right? If you're in Ohio, you can't necessarily hold your breath when you go outside, right? So we don't always have control over that, but lifestyle, we have complete control over. That's where we can move the dial the most on how it will impact how our genes are going to express themselves. All right, so that's a key thing. And yet I still have people that will say to me, well, doc, you don't understand. Diabetes runs in my family. And I say, okay, that's not the problem. The problem is not that diabetes runs in your family. The problem is that nobody's running in your family. You have the same lifestyle issue problems. That's what the problem is, right? Let's change the lifestyle piece and the genes can express themselves differently. Now, the genes are the blueprint. They're the blueprint. But even if you had a blueprint of a house, you still need the proper building materials if you're going to accomplish that plan. You know, you could have a recipe, but you still have to have the right ingredients if you want it to come out right. So that's why it is actually a combination of, it's not just the genetics. Please, please do not fall into the trap of thinking, oh no, my family has this history, there's nothing I can do about it. That is absolutely not true, because you can actually change how your genes are expressing through environment and especially through lifestyle. And of course, all of this is happening over time. And so the time that has happened in the past and the lifestyle choices you made in the past, they will be playing out right now, as well as what you're choosing right now and what you will choose in the future. It all is going to manifest into a health equation. So let's just look at how our culture, you know, when we say nobody's running your family, what's the lifestyle in our culture that is pushing the genetic expression of these chronic illnesses that our country is plagued with? Let's look at obesity trends among girls and boys. check it out, how this has just gone up, both for girls and boys. And so geneticists will tell us that genes do not change in, one generation. It takes a period of time for the actual genetic genome to change. But how those genes express, that can change even within a lifetime. And so when you look at these obesity trends, I mean, the next generation is getting there faster and with devastating implications, right? When we look at the thousands of years of genetics behind us, the 40,000 years, the 3,700 generations behind us, what we inherited were successful genetic traits. That's why they were passed down, right? So we come from a long line of successful human beings, right? So now we just have to reconcile, what are we doing that is altering how our genes are expressing to the point that we have the highest rates of chronic illness that we've ever seen. So here's another trend, right? Obesity was linked to severe coronavirus disease, especially for younger patients, right? So we know that actually that obesity that we saw as a trend in our system actually was setting up our population to be at greater risk when a virus like coronavirus comes along. And so we can see it, there was a study in China that showed that 88% of those who died were obese. 88%, right, in that study. So we know, and this is not the first time that we've seen this. In 2009, there was a study on the H1N1 influenza, and they found totally that people that were obese were more vulnerable to infectious diseases like the H1N1. That was the flu at the time, right? And then they also found that even folks that try to get a flu shot, if you're obese, your body is not going to get the same protection that others may, even when you're trying to use a flu vaccine as your method of trying to give yourself some extra protection. So when we, obesity, the study in China, I've already talked about it. We're going to just move right on here. So we know that the US is the 12th highest rate of obesity on the planet. If you look at all these other countries, they're tiny little islands in the South Pacific, pretty much is what we're seeing here, just about, except for Kuwait, right? And then there we are. We're the only developed nation in the top 12 there that has the highest rates of obesity. And so, is there more that we could be doing as to be a healthier nation and perhaps be better prepared for the next badass virus that's going to come into town? So it's time that we have a real national discussion about the overall health of Americans. And again, we saw obesity was the single biggest chronic issue that was plaguing people that were dying from COVID in New York hospitals. Even diabetes, look at the traits here and the trends, right? It just parallels what we're seeing with obesity as well. So this is this chronic illness pattern we're seeing in all of the chronic illnesses. And I'll tell you what, one of the most disturbing studies that I ever heard was this one. In 2009, what they discovered is that people have never been sicker. For the first time in the history of man, children born after the year 2000 are not expected to live as long as their parents. Okay, well, I know that sometimes when I throw statistics out, people's eyes just glaze over. They're like, oh, it's too big. I can't handle that. But I just got to let you know, I'm not going to let you get away with that with this one, because think about it. Is it okay with you if your children are the ones that are going to die younger than you, or your sisters or your grandchildren? Like, is that okay with you? Because it is not okay with me when I see in our community how children's health is being affected. We have to do something about it. When is enough enough? 86% of our healthcare dollars are going towards chronic illness. And it's not just in adults. In the 1960s, when I was growing up, it was around 2% of the childhood population that had any kind of chronic illness, about 2%. Today, it is over 50%. It's up to 54% of children are struggling with chronic illnesses. And many of them are affecting their immune systems as well. But if you look at, even just looking at where are we going, the prevalence of chronic disease in the US, you can see the trend here, and it is on a steady climb. And look at where it's headed. So we have to do something to change this momentum of where this is going, because we were born superheroes, but we have become weak. And again, the problem is not that we have a badass virus in town and the next variant is coming our way. It's not that. It's that we are not as badass as we were designed to be. And so let's look at what are the superpowers that we actually are born with. And when I say born with, I really do mean we don't have to earn them. We don't have to train for them. We don't have to work for them. We're born with them. And this is an example. Breast milk. Breast milk is one of our superpowers. Check this out. This is an example of two different, someone pumping their breast milk, and it's one day followed by the next day. And you can see they look very different. I will tell you that the right-hand one is pumped breast milk from the same mom after a night of breastfeeding a feverish baby. It's loaded and very specific for exactly what the baby needs that day. So when a baby is feverish and it's nursing from its mother, it is programming the mother's milk to deliver the exact ingredients that that baby needs to be able to manage whatever the virus or the bacteria or the stress is on their system. How perfect is that? They even have studies that show that when a mother is helping out another mother, where if one mother can't breastfeed and she actually takes another baby and breastfeeds that other baby will program her milk to deliver what that baby needs that day. Extraordinary, right? That is a superpower. That is a superpower. And that breast milk there's communication that's happening there. It's delivering the exact nutrients that the immune system needs, right? And, we didn't actually know that 5 years ago. That's new leading edge science that we're learning. And so breastfeeding is so important for the immune systems of developing babies, because when you look at the next piece here, the gut wall. So babies are born with a very permeable gut wall, a leaky gut, you might even say. And that's because we want the breast milk to get in. We want it to get all the way to the brain and everywhere in the body because it has so much value. And so that it's designed that way in order to just jumpstart that immune system. And those tight junctions after a couple of years are going to start to tighten up. And when the child's teeth break through and they're ready to eat on their own, at that point in time, the gut now seals up so that it is very selective on what goes in and out. We no longer have the design of the leaky gut that we do want in the first 2 years. So if those beginning years of human life, if someone has a C-section and they don't get the normal vaginal flora coming through the birth canal that's going to help to populate that healthy gut, if they don't get that, and if they're exposed to antibiotics, right, that's going to interfere. And then if they're fed formula, that's going to interfere. And so we just start to see things setting that child up for not having a healthy immune system and having to struggle with their immune system. So really, here, what's the next one here? T killer cells, right? They are specifically designed to find and kill cancer cells. They're part of our superpower that we have. And it is interesting that some of the studies are showing that the new COVID vaccines may actually interfere with that ability in the body. So the research is out on that. There is not consensus about how safe and effective they may be. And this may be one of the ways that it's affecting people's immune systems. But here we are, we're born with this superpower to just recognize what we need to deal with when something comes our way. Okay, what else? Fever. Oh my gosh, it's a superpower because it allows our body to heat up in order to kill off the pathogen so that we then survive. And, one of the other pieces with a fever is it will cause the cells in the body to vibrate at a higher level. Just like if you were to boil water and the water heats up and then it starts boiling and it's vibrating at a higher level. So when the cells vibrate at a higher level, the bone cells will start to release calcium. And when we have an immune system challenge, having extra calcium actually helps us to meet that challenge. So one of the reasons we have a fever is to secrete more calcium for the body to use. In fact, the pediatricians that understand the importance of how to develop a healthy immune system, they have a certain phrase or motto that they use. It's called 103 by 3. 103 by 3. And what it means is that all children, by the time they're 3 years old, they must experience 103-degree fever before they're 3 years old, because there's a window of development that has to happen that once they do have that moderate fever, it actually helps to marry together the immune system and the nervous system, so they have an efficiently functioning nervous system and immune system for the rest of their life. So if they miss that window of development, it may affect the efficiency of their immune system for the rest of their life. What parent wouldn't want to know that as they are being trained by the media to, as soon as there's a fever, to go to the medicine cabinet and get that Tylenol, right? Children's Tylenol to bring the fever down, right? Oh my gosh, there's information that is so essential. And not recognizing that we're born with these superpowers is getting in the way of people making the best decisions for themselves and their families. So what are the implications? Oh, wait, there's one more piece here that I love. Another superpower, vomiting. Vomiting is awesome. It is awesome because it is the best way to, when we identify a toxin, to just get it out as fast as possible. Now, it's not fun, it's not pleasant, it's not convenient. It even may feel socially inappropriate to be vomiting somewhere, but what a smart design of the body. And so what happens what are the implications of us getting weak? What if our bodies didn't get the breast milk? What if we didn't have a healthy gut wall? What if our killer cells were not working right? What if we should have had a fever and we brought it down? What if we should have recognized that toxin and vomited and got it out, but we didn't? If we didn't get it out fast, or we started to feel nauseous and we took an anti-nausea medication so we didn't get it out fast, now it just gets deeper into the system. So what are the implications of us getting weak? The world shuts down, right? We just went into this pandemic, not with just people that are going to figure this out on their own, but we shut the world down, not just a town or a state, the world. And the best that we could come up with was just stay at home, wash your hands, no hugging, no high fives, and hope and pray for a vaccine. And then in the end, we see the vaccine didn't stop transmission. It didn't stop deaths. It didn't stop severe illness, right? And yet that was what people were banking on, instead of putting all of our resources into just getting each individual stronger. What if that was what we what we had done is, just because really we shut down the world because there was a segment of our population that was vulnerable. And so let's change the conversation to here, right? Stop focusing on the strength of the virus and start focusing on the strength of the host, because there is going to be another badass virus that comes our way. There's going to be another variant, and we just need to be equipped to deal with it. So it's time to focus on getting you stronger, you, your family, your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers. Let's just get everybody stronger so that you won't be the one that's weak the next time something comes through. Who's with me here? Can I get a thumbs up? Who's with me? All right, all right. So how did we get so weak? How did this happen? I think there are a few factors here. One is, what I'm going to say is personal responsibility, right? Who is in charge of you? Who is responsible for your health? Is it your MD? Is it your spouse? Is it your mom? Is it your accountant telling you what you can afford and can't afford? Is it your insurance carrier, right? Is it the government who's responsible for your health? I hope that's not what you're thinking, because it's demonstrated over the last 3 years that didn't work very well, right? How about the WHO, the WHO? I hope you're not relying on them either, based on what we saw happen in the last 3 years, right? Can we all agree who is responsible for your health, right? You, right? Yeah, we are all responsible for our health. All right, there's another reason that I'm going to tell you later. I want to unpack a few things here, but then there's another reason, and that is that we have lowered our expectations of health. Culturally, we have lowered our expectations of health. We have normalized weak immune systems and chronic disease. We're just calling that normal now, right? And we actually have even changed the definition of health. So people oftentimes now, they're just thinking of, oh, it's like a toggle switch, right? You just simply toggle back and forth between healthy and sick, right? That's what happens. You get sick on Monday and Tuesday, and then you're healthy on Wednesday, right? People think it's like something that turns on and off, but the reality is this. There's 3 zones here. There's the sick zone, there's the healthy zone, but then there's the not sick zone in the middle. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that the reality is that most people spend most of their times and their lives in the not sick zone, thinking that it's healthy. So there is a difference, right? That's not healthy. Being not sick is not being healthy, but people think it is because they're looking at whether they have symptoms or not. So recognize there is a difference between sick and not sick, between sick and diagnosed and sick and undiagnosed, between sick and symptomatic and sick and asymptomatic, there's a difference between not sick and healthy. You see? So we need a better definition for health than just not sick, because people are making the worst decisions because they just think, well, I'm not sick, so I must be healthy. And that is the wrong definition to be using, because they think of sick as the opposite of healthy. But sick is not the opposite of health. It is the absence of health. And I want to unpack this for a minute here, because it's kind of like light and dark. All right, so bear with me. Let's do a little a little demo. I'm going to turn this light off here. All right, so if it's darker here, and I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to turn this off. All right, just for our demo here. There you go. All right. So when I turn the light off, I have darkness. When I turn the light on, right, I have light. Okay, so light is a thing, but darkness is not a thing. Darkness is the absence of a thing. It's the absence of light. So Vera and Stefan, if you didn't like the darkness that you had, what would you have to do?
Turn the lights on.
You'd add light, right? Exactly right. All right, so Sue, here comes the next question, if you can unmute. If you don't like the sickness that you have, what should you do?
If I don't like the sickness that I should have, I should take care of my body and give it the right supplements that it needs.
You should add health.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. Yes. You said supplements. That's an example. That's a action that is adding health. You see? So sickness is not the opposite of health. It's the absence of health. So if you don't like the sickness that you're having and you just keep treating the symptoms as though the sickness is a thing, it's not a thing. It's the absence of a thing. So we better start asking questions like, okay, what's missing? If I don't like the sickness, it's only because of one of two things is happening. There's some interference, and it's either toxicities or deficiencies or both. And if we can just reconcile the toxicities and deficiencies, then we're going to just get back to the natural state of health. So that's what I mean by adding health. I hope that makes sense to you. And let's just work with a better description of health, because actually health is a continuum here. And so on this end, this is the sick zone. This is the healthy zone. And in the middle, this is the not sick zone. It's just a little bit more sophisticated, but it's the same idea. It's the same idea. But health is dynamic. It's fluid. It's always changing. It's never static. So that means that everybody is somewhere on this continuum and nobody is standing still. Everybody's moving in one direction or the other. And there is a momentum. There's a speed that they're moving in one direction or the other. And so ask yourself, where am I right now? And which direction am I headed? Because that's really important. And are you moving in the way you want to be moving right now? And so just kind of mentally put an arrow over your mark. Where are you right now? And what's the velocity that you're moving in that direction? So right now, you are only as healthy as your family. So what about the rest of your family? Where are they on this? What direction are they headed? Right? And, you know, what would your kids say? What direction you're headed? And where are you right now? Not to mention, what would you say about their health? Right? So that's the important thing, is let's just talk about this idea of, on the left side of this is what we say sickness, but this is also where people have compromised immune systems. And on this side, this is where people are immunocompetent. This is where people are immunocompromised. Okay, so that's what happens when you lose function and you lose health. You're moving towards a loss of immune system function. Now, there are things that are going to be in that immunocompromised category. So let's look at that. Immunocompromised means you are more susceptible to not adapting to things that challenge your immune system. And so who is going to be immunocompromised? All right, well, there are some examples here. So certainly there may be some genetic disorders. You know, if you have cystic fibrosis and you have to now deal with something like corona coming through, right? You're going to be in that immunocompromised category. But I will tell you, I know people with cystic fibrosis that actually did have COVID and survived and came through it. So it's still possible. It's not just a death sentence if you have, even when you have genetic disorders. Pre-existing conditions, we already know that was one of the major factors that was the cause of the immunocompromise for so many people that did not manage COVID well. People undergoing treatments like chemotherapy. So usually when we think of immunocompromised, that's the first thing we think of, is the people that are struggling and struggling through chemotherapy or that kind of thing. But, you know, even people that are using arthritic drugs, that may be actually a form of chemotherapy that is compromising their immune system. So it's not just people with cancer. There's all kinds of people that are on medications that are compromising their immune system and making them immunocompromised, and they may not realize it. And now the elderly, okay, I have a question mark after the elderly, because it's not absolute that just because you're older that you automatically have a weaker immune system. No. If the elderly are immunocompromised, it's simply because they have spent the last 30 or 40 years living in a genetically incongruent lifestyle with a compounding effect. So they have just compounded sickness over time. If they were making fantastic high-level lifestyle choices, then their immune system is going to be just as strong as and robust. So elderly may be considered immunocompromised, but only because of all the lifestyle choices that they've been making. Does that make sense? It's not absolute just based on age.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. You don't get sick, you do sick. Just like you don't get healthy, you have to do healthy, right? So there's a discernment there. All right, so I've even got a prop here. I have, can you see these? Oh, I better just hold them up one at a time here. All right, we have some acorns here, some little acorns. Now, acorns, Sue, I have a question for you. What kind of tree do acorns make?
What kind of tree?
Yeah. Acorns grow into what kind of tree? A maple?
Maple tree? Sugar maple tree?
No.
No, I don't know. I'm
Trees.
sorry, I'm not good with
Acorns
trees.
grow into oak trees. Yeah,
Wait.
acorns grow into oak trees. Yep. So would we expect that the acorn is going to grow into an oak tree every time?
No,
Why?
because they fall off the tree. People step on them, run over them.
Exactly. So
they
we have the
also
potential.
get eaten.
That's right. We have the potential, but it's not absolute, because we have to have an environment. We have to have the right environment. If I took this acorn and I tossed it into the corner over there, how long is it going to take for that to grow into a tree? Right?
Several years.
Maybe never, right? Maybe
Exactly.
never, because it's going to need some things. It's going to need sunlight, soil, rain, right? It has to have the right environment. So a seed is an opportunist, and it's looking for the right environment. The seed is the potential, all right? So a germ is also looking for the right environment. That virus is looking for the right environment to be able to just, you know, procreate, right? To expand. And so germs are going to be everywhere, but they have to have the right soil and the terrain or environment if they're going to then manifest into anything like a disease. So really, we want to not necessarily, if we're trying to just spend time just to avoid germs, that is a losing battle. I mean, right now, if you think of how many viruses we have in our bodies, right now we have 10 to the 15, 10 to the 15th power. That's the number of viruses we have in our bodies right now. And not like of a few species. No, 10 to the 15th different species of virus in our bodies right now. And we're all worried about trying to avoid one of them, right? So we have this robustness that where we're just doing fine with this whole milieu of viruses. We actually have something called a virome that is essential for us to actually exist in this environment. We need a healthy virome. Yes. And so we shouldn't be spending energy trying to avoid germs. We should be spending energy not becoming the soil for those germs, right? That's what's important. Because if you are immunocompromised, you're weaker, you are becoming fertile soil. Versus being stronger, now you are not the right environment for a virus to wreak havoc. So I want to now share with you 5 areas to focus on. 4 of them are going to impact your health, but 1 of them is going to control it. And so which do you think is the most important? The one that controls your health, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
I would agree too. All right. So when we talk about superpowers, if we think of superheroes, if you remember the character Superman, there was something that made Superman weak. Do you remember what that was called? Any of you superhero fans? Anybody remember? Kryptonite. Kryptonite was what made Superman weak, right? So we think about, if we think about, what did kryptonite do to Superman? It caused stress for Superman and it weakened him. And so I want you to understand that stress is the kryptonite for us. Stress is what makes us weak. And bad lifestyle choices actually are what creates stress. Stress might happen, but if you also have bad lifestyle choices, you're going to be just piling more and more stress on yourself. So when you think about what is it that is affecting your health, maybe it is like mental emotional stress or social media stress or watching the news stress. Maybe it's a bad diet. Maybe it's a sedentary lifestyle. Stress is like the kryptonite to your superpowers and to your immune system. It creates immunocompromise. So let's see what happens when you have stress. Your blood pressure is going to go up because you're in a fight or flight mode. When you have stress, you're in a fight or flight mode. Think of a tiger chasing you. Your blood pressure is going to go up, your heart rate goes up, your muscle tone goes up, your digestion slows down, your reproduction goes down, serotonin levels, those feel-good hormones, right? Those are going to go down. Our sensory systems are going to be up and alert. Fear and anxiety is going to be up. That cortisol is going to be flooding our system, getting us in hyper alert mode. Our insulin sensitivity is going to be down regulated, so we get more blood sugar that's available so that we can burn that sugar in our muscles to fight that tiger. We're going to decrease our HDLs, increase our LDLs. So those are going to switch. Those are going to flip upside down. And why? Because we need those in order to make the cortisol. We need those lipids to make the cortisol that we need to flood our system with while we're fighting the tiger. Cholesterol is going to be up because cholesterol is what we use to heal a wound. So we're ready. If that tiger wounds us, we're ready. And our clotting factors will be up for that very same reason. Now, our immune response is actually going to go down. It's going to be heightened in a little way immediately, but then it's going to just drop right down because the immune system takes an enormous amount of energy to run. So while we're fighting the tiger, while we're in the fight or flight mode, we're just going to downregulate the immune system so that we can put all of our resources to fighting the tiger. And then in a few minutes, when we're done fighting the tiger, that's when we're going to ramp that immune system back up again. But while we're in fight or flight, while we're under stress, while the cortisol levels are high, we're going to downregulate the immune response. Now, this is an adaptive physiology that will save our life if in the short term, we actually are encountering a life-threatening situation, right? But what if this is the long term? What if this is a sustained response? This is what creates immunocompromise. And so stress is like kryptonite to your superpowers and to your immune system. So let's see where that stress is coming from. It actually comes at us in 3 dimensions. It's not just our thoughts. It's not just the emotionally stressful events that occur. It's also coming from toxins and chemical stress and from traumas and physical stresses. And so, when we think of this last 3 years, so many people had so much higher levels of stress. In fact, modern life already was way too stressful. It has been engineered to be so incongruent genetically, to be so stressful. We couldn't have planned it better to create more stress for us, right? That's the way modern life has evolved, right? how many here are feeling like they have more stress now than they had a few years ago even, right? Anybody give me a thumbs up? Somewhat. I know you're all getting your nervous systems adjusted and you're learning the ways to deal with that stress. So I like seeing that response, right? But how many people here would agree that stress does make us sick? It has the potential of making us sick. Yeah, we would all agree on that. And so it's because it comes at us from all eras and all angles here. Now, in the last 3 years, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, boy, I'll tell you what, those frontline workers, they had high levels of stress. And I actually was taking care of frontline workers. I actually did a program for a while where they just got free care. Just come in, just get free care. We just got to keep you going here. And so one of those frontline workers, they all just described the incredible amounts of stress they were under. And this one woman, Annie, she just came in after being adjusted a bit and she said, you know, this is remarkable that I am in so much stress and in the environment, but I don't have any anxiety, which in the past I would have. Tammy was somebody that had back pain that was coming from the stress. And her back pain went away as she was getting adjusted and she was able to stay on the job. Lori, with her, it was neck pain because she had all these awkward postures because of having to do physical distancing and having to wear all the PPE. And so it was all just awkward. And that created more stress for her. So there was so much stress during that time. And so we know that stress can be one of the factors. So what do we need to do to start to reconcile this? Okay, let's look at it. Our mindset. What do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? We need to stop our limited thinking. We need to stop our worrying and our holding of grudges. I just got to tell you that they actually did a study in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1991. You're going to be astounded at this study. What they did is they took almost 400 people, 400 humans, and they dripped viruses into their noses. Like 400 people volunteered for this. Can you believe it? They won't get 400 people today to do that. But in 1991, they're like, I'll try that, right? They had 400 humans where they dripped viruses into their noses. So that means that everyone had the exact same exposure to these viruses. And these viruses were all kinds of cold viruses. So it was rhinoviruses and adenoviruses, and even coronaviruses were part of that, right? We've been around coronaviruses for a long time, so that's not anything new. And so do you think that everyone came down with the cold?
No.
No, they didn't. You're exactly right. So just like the coronavirus, people got exposed and some became sick. And some might have died with the corona pandemic. And some maybe had almost no symptoms at all. Well, in this particular study, they looked closely and they saw that the ones that did become sick, they did get the cold, they were the ones that had stress. They were either worrying about the future, or they had regrets about the past, or they were judgmental about something, right? Those were the people that actually did get sick. So stress does affect our immune system. And if you want to unpack and explore that, there's a fantastic book called The Biology of Belief, which was written by a guy named Bruce Lipton. It's an extraordinary book because it shows how our thinking, our beliefs will actually affect our biology. He's a cellular biologist, so he knows what he's talking about when it affects that. So limited thinking, stop worry, stop holding grudges. And what do we need to start doing? We need to start having a vision of what we want. And so when I think about my own vision of people, when they come in, when they walk through my doors, the first thing I'm thinking of, I envision a world where the natural state is extraordinary health. I really do. So for that individual person, I'm already imagining what their health is going to be like if we can just reconcile what's getting in the way of them expressing their superpowers. And so some great things to do is just have a vision of a healthy you. Just start spending time having that vision of you being robust and strong and having these superpowers. Because if you have the visions of, oh no, that virus is so strong, it's going to hurt me, right? That's the vision you're creating. Well, somebody once said that worries are prayers that you don't want to be answered, right? But you're investing your energy into them. And so why not actually make your prayers, make your vision what you do want, right? And then also think about being in alignment with the people around you, with the places around you, with the healthcare model that you're using. Is it in alignment with what your values are? And then think about gratitude. the studies all show that the fastest way to reverse, to get out of stress, is to go into gratitude. So just think about what you're grateful for. It doesn't actually matter what it is. Just think about what you could be grateful for, and you're already going to start turning the stress switch off. I would suggest that you're grateful for your superpowers that you actually have, and how do you ramp those up and support those. Now, some other books that you might enjoy besides The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, any of his books are amazing. Louise Hay, she has been in the culture of visioning and saying affirmations, for decades. So she's a great author to look at. Byron Katie has written a book called Loving What Is, that is just a remarkable classic that you can use. And then learning about EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping on the endpoints of acupuncture meridians to just turn the stress switch off in 30 seconds. So I have another webinar on that, and so I can share that with you. So those are some of the things that you can do for your mindset. How about sleep? What do we need to stop doing when it comes to sleep? Okay, if you're lying awake stressing about with your thoughts, right? We need to change that. But also, doing the EFT tapping, just doing gratitude before you go to bed can actually help you with sleep. There's a protocol that I like to use when I'm going to sleep. I call it the 4-2-1 protocol. And so it's basically just laying there and thinking about, what are 4 things that I'm grateful for? And so I have to just think clearly, like, what are 4 things that I'm grateful for? And then what are 2 things that I just love? I just love these 2 things, right? Whatever they are. And then 1 thing that I could use a little help with, and just put it out there. I could use some help with this one. And doing that 4-2-1 process, it just helps me just drop into a peaceful state so that I can just go to sleep. So I need help with this, just offer it up and then let go. Now, just recognize also that alcohol is not actually a good way to try and improve our sleep. No, in fact, that's going to interfere with good sleep. So that trying to self-medicate with alcohol, that's maybe a good short-term solution, but it's not a good long-term solution. There's a book written by Matthew Walker out of UC Berkeley. It's called Why We Sleep. Why We Sleep is the name of the book. And he actually does say, as far as the immune system goes, if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, you will tank your immune system efficiency by 50%. By 50%. So this is non-negotiable. If you are sick or trying to prevent sickness, you must get 8 hours of sleep. And he just said that you just have to do that. And don't do what humans are the only species to do, which is procrastinate with sleep. We are the only species that will voluntarily get less sleep than we need, right? What are we doing? We are a crazy species in that way. So what should we start doing? We need to start getting 8 hours of sleep, right? And the best sleep times are that you're deeply asleep between 11 and 1. 11 and 1 is the most important time to be deeply asleep. That means going to bed by 10 so that you're deeply asleep by 11 and you stay deeply asleep all the way till 1. And then after that is where a lot of healing and restoration and regenerative changes happen after that. So actually after 5.5 hours was when the most repair happens for healing. And that's why that 8 hours is so important. We need 5 just to get the basics done. And then we need that extra, 3 hours to get the healing happening if we have to restore ourselves. Having a sleep sanctuary is so crucial. Really create that bedroom as just the place where only sleep happens. And so you want to make sure that you have real darkness, that you have the right temperature, not too hot, not too cold. 60 degrees is actually the perfect temperature for sleeping.
60.
And you want no screens. No screens in that bedroom, right? That blue light is going to interfere with the melatonin. It's going to interfere with the natural circadian rhythm that's going to help us to sleep. And even just look at the sleep surface that you're on. Make sure it's a healthy surface, a healthy bed. We have the proper pillows that we sell right here in the office that are so great for keeping your spine healthy while you sleep. When people ask me about the best beds, I do like the Sleep Number beds. And then there's another brand that's called the BioPosture beds that you can actually change it so it's just right for you. And if things change for you, it's actually changeable as well. So those are some things to consider for sleep. Diet style. What do we need to stop doing? We need to stop putting the toxic foods in, right? Let's just stop those additives and preservatives and the sugar. They actually did a study. They found that drinking 1 glass of orange juice tanked the immune system for at least 5 hours and as much as 12 hours. Now, that might be counterintuitive because you're thinking, wait, orange juice, don't oranges have vitamin C in them? Well, it turns out that orange juice, where they take the pulp out and it's just the straight juice, it has so much sugar that's just going directly into our bloodstream that spikes our blood sugar, and it literally tanked the immune system for at least 5 hours and as long as 12 hours. So sugar is something to really consider. Just a teaspoon of sugar is going to tank the immune system for 45 minutes. And that's documented research. It's all over that research. Now, another thing is starving yourself. And what I mean is deficiencies. So don't eat empty calories. Don't fill yourself up on empty calories because you'll feel full, but you're actually starving yourself of the nutrients that you need. So that's what I mean by don't starve yourself. It's different from fasting. Fasting actually has some benefits to the immune system because something called autophagy occurs. Autophagy, it means self-eating. And so what happens is if you are fasting, your body is now just free and resting the digestive system, and it goes and it looks around the body for the bad cells, for the sick cells, and it eats those up and uses that as fuel. So fasting is different from what I mean when I say starving yourself, which means just eating empty calories. So you're a deficiency in the nutrients that you need. So we have to get rid of the toxins, the toxicities, and we have to replace the deficiencies with good nutrients. So what do we need to start doing? We need to be hydrating. Hydration is so important because if we don't have water in our bodies, that's what we use for moving things around our bodies. And if we don't have enough water, our body has to go with a plan B. Like, how are we going to move things around if we don't get the water in? Your body actually will create mucus as a substitute for not having enough water. Now, you know, mucus, if you have an immune system challenge and then you just keep adding more mucus, that just makes everything harder. So even people that struggle with allergies or that kind of thing, you know, the mucus can be one of the problems. So just make sure you're really well hydrated, whether it's, you know, flu season that you want to protect yourself against or allergy season. It's the same. We want to stay well hydrated. In fact, let's just stay well hydrated the entire year. Let's just do that. All right. Paleo diet style. So this is, again, a way to reconcile the toxins and the deficiencies, and the supplementation is a way to do that as well. Let's unpack these. So when we say what's paleo correct, it means unlimited vegetables, abundant lean and natural meats, some fruits, nuts, and seeds, and a limit on starch and no sugar. All right, because when we think of Paleolithic man, this is when our genes were set 40,000 years ago, right? This is what we would have been eating just naturally. We wouldn't have had a choice about it. This is just the way we would have eaten. Okay, maybe we'd come across a honey tree every once in a while and we'd gorge on that honey while we could, right? But then we'd go back to very little sweet, right? Maybe fruits now and then. That is when we were hitting the jackpot and could find those fruits. So organic is going to be best. The less GMO, the better. The more nutrients, you know, the less processed. Watch out for that sugar. It's very toxic, very addictive. And just recognize that this is part of an overall lifestyle. It's just one of the components. So remember that a deficient supply of the essential nutrients for your immune cells is going to make you immunocompromised. And so having the proper diet style is going to be key. Okay, how about supplementation? So if you just need to do some rebuilding of tissues and rebuilding of organ systems, what do you do there? Okay, this is some of the key supplements that seem to be the most useful. And so, again, just, you know, there's some variations on this, and there definitely are ways that I want to test people so I can get it really specific for them. But generally speaking, these are some of the important supplements if you need to actually be bulletproofing and boosting your immune system. So vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin C, magnesium is important, and that tanks when we're stressed. And a lot of the EMF radiation, 5G, that kind of wireless, that kind of stress that we're around as well. The magnesium is really important for that. There's some studies that are showing some great results with that, along with the vitamin D. Selenium is important. Zinc is important. Quercetin. Quercetin is actually a zinc ionosphere, which means that it helps zinc get into the cells. So that combination of zinc and quercetin is really good. Prebiotics and probiotics. So probiotics are the healthy gut flora. Prebiotics is what feeds the healthy gut flora. And if you're getting a really diverse probiotic foods in your diet, like sauerkraut, kimchi, apple cider vinegar, miso, yogurt, kefir, kombucha, like those are the kinds of things that have a lot of diverse probiotic strains in them. So the more of those, the better, to just really get a diverse microbiome. But we also are finding that there are important soil organisms we need. We need to have our hands in the dirt, right? We need to just stop creating that that sterile environment that we are always trying to push just to avoid certain viruses. And by trying to avoid them, we're actually wiping out a lot of the healthy germs or the healthy bugs that we need to populate our system. Fish oil, so important because it actually helps to drop inflammation in the body. It helps brain function, helps the immune system function. Iodine, so useful, especially when the immune system is being compromised. You want to use that. And then there's something called ion biome or ion gut restore, and that's to help those tight junctions in the gut be really healthy. The old name for that product was Restore. You may recognize it from that. So these are some of the things that are really good for supplementation. And so what some of the studies actually showed, even for COVID, that the vitamin C, the vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, selenium, they all have antiviral properties. And they actually had studies showing that in medical trials that it was actually helping effectively treat COVID-19 and severe pneumonia and actually to prevent death. Another one showed vitamin D, significant role in COVID-19 mortality rates. And they found that those that had high levels of vitamin D had the lowest levels of poor outcomes, and the opposite was true. And then again, quercetin, you take it together with the zinc to improve the uptake. And that is if you are deficient in the zinc. So you can also overload on zinc, and that's not necessarily good either. You don't want to be too high or too low with your zinc. So that's why I like to test people specifically. And then the microbiome, right? So making sure that the gut microbiota, the composition is healthy and diverse. And that actually did show in these studies that it bolstered and protected people when they were exposed to COVID-19. All right, how about movement? What do we need to stop doing? We need to stop being sedentary. And that is so important. Sitting is the new, what do they say? Smoking, sitting is the new smoking, right? Sedentary lifestyle, it is a problem. We need to be moving our bodies in order to keep the lymphatic system flowing, keep the blood flowing, keep ourselves active. Also, we need to stop having traumas, slips and falls, car accidents, sports injuries. We want to avoid those kinds of macro big traumas, but we also need to avoid the micro traumas. So we have macro traumas, the big traumas, and then we have micro traumas, which are usually postural stresses, bad habits, poor posture, right? This is the biggest risk factor in modern life is posture these days. And that is actually the real culprit behind so many neck issues that I see these days. Look at all ages here are being affected, and they're all bending their heads forward, right? And so, people say, oh, well, don't sweat the small stuff, right? Yeah, what about things like coronaviruses or bullets or deer ticks, right? Those are small things that we better be concerned about those, right? Because some of them can be very dangerous. And so again, the expression, it doesn't apply here. Micro traumas are something we have to pay attention to. And so micro traumas are coming from the postural stress that's associated with sitting in front of a computer or a screen, but it's also from a laptop, from a tablet, from a mobile phone, a handheld device, and it is collectively known as tech stress. And it is arguably one of the most serious health threats of the modern world. And it just is going normalized and unnoticed, but we have to shine a light on it. We have to talk about not just, immune system hygiene, like hygiene, washing your hands. We have to talk about spinal hygiene here. And so what does all of this stress add up to? It leads to something called subluxations. And these stressors are causing joint misalignment, soft tissue damage, inflammation and nerve irritation. And when that happens, our smart body is going to create muscle spasms that just strap that joint down. And now we get joint fixation where the joint is no longer moving. And all of those joints have mechanoreceptors sending messaging up to the brain, letting the brain know what's going on. So when we are moving a joint, whether it's our fingers or our elbows or our spine, when we're moving those joints, they send signaling to the brain and it supplies the nutrition and stimulation to the brain. 90% of it comes from movement of the spine. If we have muscle spasms and joint fixations from subluxations, it actually will increase the stress hormones in our body, because when we fixate that joint, we no longer get the signaling to the brain to tell the brain what's happening in that area. And when the brain loses track, loses something called proprioception, a sense of where the body is, and movement is what supplies that proprioception. When we lose that sense of proprioception, the brain goes into stress mode. What's going on down there? So we go into a global stress response and cortisol levels go up. So when we're subluxated, we will increase stress hormone production. We will increase cortisol levels. And we know from our slide we looked at earlier, that is going to alter our immune system function. So our spine, our nervous system, it's the master system that controls everything else, but it's also one of the most delicate systems. So it needs to have a suit of armor that's protecting it. So we have our skull, that's our helmet that's protecting our brain. We have our spinal column, which is a suit of armor that's protecting our spinal cord. And then the nerves come out from between that, going out to all the different cells in the body. So our spine is our lifeline. And so when we look at that map of the nervous system, where are those nerves going, right? Those nerves will travel out to the body, to all the cells in the body and back again. As long as the message gets from the brain to the cells and back again without interference, you get to be healthy. But if there's anything that disturbs that flow of messages, we're going to start to see a breakdown of function out in the body. And so when we look at the map of the nervous system, where do these nerves go? Well, from the top of the spine, we see they go up into the head. But look, they also go to the glands in the throat, the tonsils. They go to the lungs. They go to the heart, the stomach, the liver, the intestines. 80% of our immune system is living in our gut. If we have compromised nerve supply to the gut, that could affect our immune system function. We have nerves at the bottom that go to our bladder, our reproductive organs, and our bowels. We have nerves that come out from the middle of our spine that go to, again, the heart, the stomach, the liver, the intestines, to the adrenal glands and the kidneys, bladder, reproductive organs. And so let's just say that we have nerve supply to the spleen that is being interfered with. The spleen is one of our major immune system organs. What if we have interference in the nerve supply to the tonsils? What if we have interference in the nerve supply to the bone marrow, which is where we produce a lot of our immune system cells? So these are the ways that when you have subluxations, which interfere with the master system, the nervous system that controls our health, that it controls our immune system, we can start to see immunocompromise as a result of that. So the problem is that you can have these subluxations and not feel them. They don't necessarily come with pain. And so when we look at it, 90% of our nervous system is running the function, only 10% feels pain. So we can have compromise in our immune system that's coming from compromise in our nervous system and not necessarily feel any pain. And that is so key for us to understand that, because the thing that is causing the dysfunction, right, it may be coming from an interference in the nervous system. And that could be from many things. In fact, it's true for our most common health issues that we don't necessarily have symptoms showing up right off that we're aware of. Think about diabetes or cancer, right? Or even tooth decay, right? What does that feel like when you have a cavity? By the time you're feeling it, it's already advanced. And so that's the same is true when we think about our health. So remember, if we have a stress response, it's going to cause our immune response to downregulate. Stress is the kryptonite. And subluxation is the kryptonite that creates the weakness in our nervous system, which is what then controls our immune system. So what do we need to do to start doing for movement? Exertion, burst exertion. That means panting. Like panting and sweating means you're really exerting yourself. I have some people that they go on the same 5-mile walk every day. When I ask them, oh, do you get to the point where you're panting and sweating? They're like, oh no, I can do that 5. In the beginning I did, but now, no, not anymore. I don't pant at all. I can just do that, knock out that 5 miles so easily. I'm so strong now. Okay, you're going to be in trouble because your body's accommodated that. And now you're not challenging your body anymore. So for a healthy immune system, you actually want to make sure that you're getting panting while you are exerting yourself. Now, if it's wintertime and you're out exercising, you're panting, you may not be sweating because it's cold, but you want to be panting. If you're swimming, you won't notice if you're sweating because you're swimming, but you want to be panting. So any exercise you're doing, you want to push yourself so you get to the point of panting. Then you're going to help to upregulate your immune system when you do that. Ergonomics, you want to make sure you do not have those poor postures and bad habits that are going to compromise your spine. Not only that, but hunched posture will actually put stress on your lymphatic system, and it'll slow down the lymphatic system as well, which is what you need. You need to have a flowing lymphatic system to have a healthy immune system. All right. And then also you need to get checked for subluxations. You need to get checked for subluxations because that may be impairing different aspects of your immune system, or it may be creating that background cortisol high levels that is now going to regulate the immune system overall. So what about burst exertion exercise? So what is the impact of fitness versus fatness for COVID-19 prognosis? It definitely made a difference. And the current state of the physical inactivity in COVID-19, it was the tale of 2 pandemics, right? The pandemic that hit the people that were sedentary and fat, they got hit much harder than the people that were fit. And so definitely we saw a difference there. So I want to just show you just, and actually, that other part there, again, there was that 17% lower risk of, where is it here? Lower risk of hospitalization if you actually had that more burst exertion exercise and you were more robust. And then one other piece here, right? Healthy living for pandemic event protection, right? And the goal was to improve global health and to protect individuals from the risks associated with chronic disease and viral infections, right? Well, let's get fit here. That's going to be the way forward here. All right, so here is an exercise. We talk about hygiene, washing our hands, right? The life extension exercises are all about spinal hygiene. So remember, this is the way you do it. You're going to have your arms stretching way up towards the ceiling with engaging your core as you do it. Just stretch them up. That's the Y. And then the W is putting your elbows down into your back pocket, just pushing them right down into the back pocket. And you're going to take a couple breaths each time you do these positions. And then the next one is the L, where you're going to be having the elbow bent and you're going to push the hands back as far as you can. And then you're going to have the Y, or the T rather, which is stretching the hands out on either side. And again, pushing them back, opening up the chest as you do it. So you want to spend about 20 seconds in each position, taking a couple of breaths. And you want to do 1 round for every 2 hours of sitting, or at the very least, if you think about dental hygiene, you do that twice a day. Make sure you're getting your spinal hygiene in twice a day as well. Now, I want to share a fascinating, this is a disruptive thought I'm going to share with you here. There's this curious example of Masha and Dasha. I don't know if any of you have heard of Masha and Dasha before, but Masha and Dasha were Siamese twins, and they lived in Russia, in the Soviet Union at the time. I believe it was the 1950s when they lived there. And they were studied by the Russian health system and the doctors because they just were wanting to understand like what happens in the physiology of somebody that is a Siamese twin. And so these twins, they shared a circulatory system. They shared a bloodstream. So what was in one of their bloodstream was shared with the other. They shared certain organs. They shared their lymphatic system, right? And so whenever there was a bacteria or virus that entered one of the twins' bloodstreams, soon they would see that in the blood of her sister. And yet it was surprising that illness actually affected them differently. So Dasha was more bent over to the side than Masha was, and Dasha was more prone to colds than Masha was, right? Masha actually smoked occasionally, but had a healthier constitution. And so at one point, Dasha got the measles, right? The measles virus was circulating in their bloodstream. Only Dasha got the measles. Masha did not get the measles. Yeah, that's how you say measles in your language, right? Yeah, right? Isn't that incredible? Because we thought, wait, isn't measles being caused by the virus? Apparently not. Apparently there is another thing we have to look at here. And so what is it that they did not share? They had their own central nervous systems. They had their own brains and their own spinal cords. And the twin that was more bent over actually had more health concerns. So although they had a common circulatory system, a common digestive system, a common excretory, lymphatic, hormonal systems, they were joined at the hips, they had separate spinal columns and spinal cords. So when would we ever get this kind of information except from this scenario? Nature has given us a gift to understand this. And I hope that it helps you to think about, it's really about getting your nervous system as healthy as possible that will have an impact on how you experience any kind of illness. And so here's somebody that came in to see me, that Elaine, she had chronic sinus infections, but when she came in, it was because of headaches and neck pain. And yet what she reported to me was that she had chronic sinus infections, she had allergies, asthma, eczema, and each year she was getting better because she was doing more lifestyle changes and her spine was getting healthier. And so she was getting healthier and healthier. In 2018, she had a battle with idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, and that normalized within a few months and remained stable. In 2019, she said her sinuses were the clearest they had ever been, and she had the best pollen season ever. She was able to do yard work and housework with plenty of stamina. And in February 2020, right before the COVID hit, her breathing was the best it had ever been. Now, what would have happened if she didn't have that healthy nervous system, those healthy lifestyle choices over the years? She started in 2016. We had 4 years of working together to get her as healthy as possible. We were building health through all 4 of those years so that she actually went into the pandemic the strongest she had ever been. Wow, that was important. And what about seniors, right? We say, oh, the elderly, they are immunocompromised. Well, we had seniors in the practice that had no colds or flu, even with lots of travel. We had seniors reporting that their allergies had gone away, and they didn't even have jet lag anymore with their travel, right? With a healthy nervous system. So how do you know if you have subluxations? You have to get tested. And so people test all kinds of things. They test their blood work, they test their blood pressure, they test, their white blood cells. But what is it that controls your blood work? What is it that controls what's happening in your bloodstream? It's the nervous system that controls that. And so if you're wondering about how much is stress affecting me, how do you know? You have to test the nervous system if you want to know whether or not your stress is actually causing any kind of immunocompromise that is going to set you up for having a bad outcome the next time the next pandemic hits or the next variant comes through. So if you already are doing all the things that you need to be doing from everything we've gone over, then just keep doing those. If there's things that you could ramp up on, I want you to ramp up on those. If you already know that your nervous system is healthy, great, just keep keeping it healthy. And if you're watching this recording and you're not sure if your nervous system is healthy, I'd like to invite you in to get checked so that you can find out. And then we'll do a thorough examination. We'll use instrumentation that the astronauts use to measure their health. We use motion palpation, static palpation. We do the posture assessment. We may use x-rays and that instrumentation, again, that the astronauts use. So we actually have scanning technology that will measure how the nervous system is affecting your organs, your tissues, your circulation in your body. And so right here, you know, this is the area that controls the liver, the detox organ in the body, how well you're detoxing from stresses you're exposed to. How about if you were in Ohio? How good is that liver working to de-stress from toxins you might be exposed to? You want to go into those kinds of crises with as healthy a system as possible, right? What about the nerve supply to the spleen, or the nerve supply to the adrenals or the kidneys? Kidneys are detox organs as well. What about the nerve supply to the bone marrow, to the tonsils, right? All of those things need to be healthy. You have to have a healthy nerve supply if you want those organs to be functioning in a healthy way. And then we have other types of scans that we use to measure all the different aspects of your nervous system. And so if you do find that you have subluxations, how do we correct those subluxations? Well, chiropractic is the way that we correct them. And we use a light touch model in the office so that we can help your brain to change how those subluxations have gotten set up and actually have your body unwind those subluxations. So you have a clear nervous system. So the brain is communicating with all the tissue cells in the body. Those messages getting out and back without interference. And then you get to be healthy, and you get to start to experience and move towards that extraordinary level of health that we have those superpowers to get us there. But you have to have a healthy nervous system to do that. And so remember, I talked about there was one reason why we have our health crisis that we have that I was going to cover later. And here it is. So it's personal responsibility and having the right definition of health, but also procrastination is the thief of health. And it's the thing that the research shows may be having the most significant impact on our country's health. People know they're supposed to eat better, that they're supposed to get their sleep, that they're supposed to exercise, and they just don't get around to it. They think that they have time. But there's something called the law of diminishing intention, LODI, the law of diminishing intention. It's basically people have good intentions, but the longer that they wait, the less they're likely to act on those intentions. And so they think, oh, I'll take care of my health next year. I'll start those exercises on Monday. Yeah, procrastination kills, because cancer doesn't wait, diabetes doesn't wait, viruses don't wait, and subluxations don't wait either. The bad boys don't wait. Procrastination is the thief of health. And so we want to just make sure that you are doing what it takes to overcome procrastination, right? And so think about, who do you know that's procrastinating about their health? Who do you know that actually wants to take steps but doesn't know what steps to take? Who do you know that doesn't know whether or not their nervous system is healthy enough to be keeping their immune system strong? And so I want you to know that we would love to check people. And if any of you are struggling with that, then just send us a text and use the phrase bulletproof and send it to our office number, 802-985-9850. Just send us a text that says bulletproof, and we'll know that that's you telling us that you want to connect, and we'll get you into my schedule and we can find out whether or not we can help you. And I want to just finish up with a story. There was a family that they had a tradition that whoever's birthday it was, however number of years old they were, they had that number of candles on their cake, which meant that they had that number of wishes that they could wish for. And so one year it was the dad's turn, and he was 40 years old, and he came up with this list of 40 things that he was wishing for. And it was so much fun to be thinking about all the things that he wanted. And then the following year, when he turned 41, he only had one wish, because he had cancer. And his only wish was to be healthy. So, you know, procrastination is the thief of health. These things don't wait. We have to do everything we can to get as healthy as possible. And so when you have your health, you have many wishes. And when you lose your health, you have just one. So my goal is for you and your family to have as many wishes as possible. And so do what it takes to build health, to get stronger, so that you can enjoy the life that you want. All right. One candle, one wish. We want to have many candles and many wishes. All right. So if I can help you, please send us a text. I'd love to get you into my schedule. Everybody else, I hope you've learned something and that you're ready to apply it. And with this, we're going to sign off, and we are going to, let me just get myself here with the recording stopped. Here we go.